It was always midnight in the belly of the beast. The mutes had robbed him of his rope and shoes and breechclout. He wore hair and chains and scaps. Salt water sloshed about his legs whenever the tide came in, rising as high as his genitals, only to ebb again when the tide receded. His feet had grown huge and soft and puffy, shapeless things as big as hams. He knew that he was in some dungeon, but not where or for how long. There had been another dungeon before this one. In between there had been the ship, the silence. The night they moved him, they had seen the moon floating on a black wine sea with a leering face that reminded him of Euron. Rats moved in the darkness, swimming through the water. They would bite him as he slept until he woke and drove them off with shouts and thrashings. Euron's beard and scalp crawled with lice and fleas and worms. He could feel them moving through his hair, and the bites itched him intolerably. His chains were so short that he could not reach to scratch. The shackles that bound him to the wall were old and rusted, and his fetters had cut into his wrists. When the tide rushed in to kiss him, the salt got into the wounds and made him gasp. When he slept, the darkness would rise up and swallow him, and the dream would come, an Uri and the scream of a rusted hinge. The only light in his wet world came from the lanterns that the visitors brought with them, and it came so seldom that it began to hurt his eyes. A nameless, sour-faced man brought his food, salt beef as hard as wooden shingles, bread crawling with weevils, slimy, sticking fish. Euron gobbled it down and hoped for more, though afters not he retched the meal up after. The man who brought the food was dark, dour, mute. His tongue was gone. Euron did not doubt. That was Euron's way. The light would leave when the mute did, and once again his world would become a damp darkness smelling of grime and mold and feces. Sometimes Euron came himself. Euron would wake from the sleep to find his brother standing over him, lantern in hand. Once aboard the Silence, he hung the lantern from a post and poured them cups of wine.
"Drink with me, brother,"
he said. That night he wore a shirt of iron scales and a cloak of blood-red silk. His eye patch was red leather, his lips blue. "Why am I here?" Euron croaked at him. His lips were crusty with scabs, his voice hard. "Where are we sailing?"
"South, for conquest, plunder, and dragons."
"Madness. My place is on the islands."
"Your place is where I want you. I am your king."
"What do you want of me?"
"What can you offer me that I have not had before?" "I left the islands in the hands of old Eric Ironmaker, and sealed his loyalty with the hand of our sweet Asher. I would not have you preaching against his rule, so I took you with us."
"Release me. The god commands it."
"Drink with me. Your king commands it."
Euron grabbed a handful of the priest's tangled black hair, pulled his head back, and lifted the wine cup to his lips. But what flowed into his mouth was not wine. It was thick and vicious, with a taste that seemed to change with every swallow, now bitter, now sour, now sweet. When Euron tried to spit it out, his brother tightened his grip and forced more down his throat.
"That's it, priest. Gulp it down. The wine of the warlocks, sweeter than your seawater, with more truth in it than all the gods of earth."
"I curse you," Euron said. When the cup was empty, liquor dripped from down his chin into his long black beard.
"If I had the tongue of every man who cursed me, I could make a cloak of them."
Euron hocked and spat. The spittle struck his brother's cheek and hung there, blue-black, glistening.
Euron flicked it off his face with a forefinger, then licked the finger clean. Your god will come for you tonight. Some god, at least. And when the Dhamphair slept, sagging in his chains, he heard the creak of a rusted hinge. Uri! There is no hinge here, no door, no Uri. His brother Oregon was long dead, yet there he stood. One arm was black and swollen, stinking with maggots, but he was still Uri, still a boy, no older than the day he died. You know what awaits below the sea, brother. Uri, he cried. There is no hinge here, no door, no Uri. His brother Oregon was long dead, yet there he stood. One arm was black and swollen, stinking with maggots, but he was still Uri, still a boy, no older than the day he died. You know what awaits below the sea, brother. The drowned god, the watery holes. Uri shook his head. Worms await you, Euron. When he laughed, his face sloughed off, and the priest saw that it was not Uri, but Euron, the smiling eye hidden. He showed the world his blood eye now, dark and terrible, clad head to heel in scale as dark as onyx. He sat upon a mound of blackened skulls, as a dwarf capered round his feet and a forest burned behind him. The bleeding star bespoke the end, he said to Euron. There are the last days, when the world shall be broken and remade. A new god shall be born from the grapes and charnel pits. Then Euron lifted a great horn to his lips and blew, and dragons and krakens and sphinxes came at his command and bowed before him. Kneel, brother. The crow's eye commanded. I am your king. I am your god. Worship me, and I will raise you up to be my priest. Never. No godless man may sit in the sea-stone chair. Why would I want that hard black rock? Brother, look again and see where I am seated. Euron Dhamphair looked. The mound of skulls was gone. Now it was metal underneath the crow's eye. A great, tall, twisted seat of razor-sharp iron, barbs and blades and broken swords, all dripping blood. Impaled upon the longest spikes were the bodies of the gods. The maiden was there, and the father and the mother, the warrior and crone and smith, even the stranger. They hung side by side with all manner of queer foreign gods, the great shepherd and the black goat, three-headed trios and the pale child Bacalon, the lord of the light and the butterfly god of Nath, and there, swollen and green, half devoured by crabs, the drowned god festered with the rest, sea-water still dripping from his hair. Then Euron's crow's eye laughed again, and the priest woke screaming in the bowels of silence as piss ran down his leg. It was only a dream, a vision born of foul black wine. The king's moot